download Boost Chase, and you can join like a game and get points for attending this workshop and things like this. So they want all freshmen to sign up for this. You can get credit. Okay, how many of you have ever heard of the Student Academic Resource Center? Okay, quite a few of you. How many of you have ever been to SARC or used one of our services? Okay, still a handful of you. So these are the academic success workshops, and this is just one of the things that we do at SARC. So we have tutoring and supplemental instruction as well. A lot of those are in the STEM classes, and it's like small group sessions. So we have science and a lot of math, a lot of engineering, things like that. So check us out if you need some extra help there. All of our services are free. We do stuff like this, like the workshops on things like time management, study skills, test-taking strategies. But if you need more like one-on-one help, or maybe you're struggling in a class that we don't offer tutoring for, we have the learning skills consultations. So you can sign up on our website or call in and set up an appointment. And you can meet one-on-one with one of the graduate assistants. So I'm one of the graduate assistants, and then we have 3 other ones in the office. OPAL is online peer-assisted learning. So that is kind of like tutoring in SI, but there are a few classes we have online sections for if you can't make it to one of the in-person sessions. And then ACE coaching, it's a newer program that we have, and you meet one-on-one with an ACE coach in our office. You can do them a couple times a semester. It can be good to kind of hold you accountable, help you develop better study skills or better time management strategies, and they kind of check in with you every few weeks to see how you're doing and make sure that you are being successful. Okay, so all of you have probably procrastinated at one point or another. So what are some ways that you know that you're a procrastinator?
When you look at your web courses and you realize you have an assignment tomorrow that you haven't even started on yet.
Yeah.
Or when you look and you see, oh man, I got a test and the test is in a couple of hours. Let me try to rush and get this going.
Right. So you haven't been keeping up with your assignments and you're like, wow, like I didn't even know this happened.
When you go to read your online textbook and then you end up clicking a new tab and watching YouTube videos instead.
Right. It's really easy on the internet to get distracted, have all these ads, you get notifications on your phone, and then you go down the rabbit hole.
When you go to see an exam and it says it's going to be on Friday, and you're like, yeah, I got time, I'll go ahead and wait. Then you end up studying last minute the day before.
Right. You think like, oh, that's a week from now. I have so much time to prepare, and then you realize again on Thursday, oh wow, but tomorrow it's Friday. It's that day. So when I had to make this PowerPoint, I didn't make it till Friday afternoon before I left work. I don't work on Mondays. So I was procrastinating doing the workshop on procrastination. Like, it just happens. You put things off. You're like, oh, that's easy. I'll just do it, later. And then later becomes like, oh, I've got to do it before I leave today because the workshop's on Tuesday. So it is normal. Camilla? Okay, some possible thought processes you have while you're procrastinating. Click the first one. This is one, there are like different ones. Okay, if I just ignore the task, it'll go away. So sometimes, right, yeah, I hear a lot of laughs and nods. You feel that way sometimes. You're like, oh, this is really overwhelming. Like, I don't want to do this, so I'm just not going to do it. Like, it'll do itself. It'll get done. Next one. It won't take that long, so I'll just do it later. I'm really guilty of this one. You're like, oh, that assignment, that'll take like an hour. I'll do it tomorrow. And then you start doing it, and you realize, oh, this takes a lot more effort than I thought. It turns into like 3 hours that you had not allotted for. So it can get really overwhelming. There's some seats up here. It doesn't block the projector, so y'all can sit down. Next one. I only need a C on this assignment to pass the class. So how many times have you waited to the last minute and then figured out like what's the lowest grade you can get to still pass? A lot of raised hands. That's a common one. Say like, oh, well, I'm doing well. I've gotten like B's and C's on the other assignment. So if I just make a C on this one, then I'll be coasting through. Next. I work better under pressure, so I'll study the night before. Yeah? Yeah, but sometimes, well, the next slide is all about that. So I feel that way sometimes. Sometimes when you have a little bit of push, then you're more likely to get it done. Because some stress is good stress. You need that kind of push to say like, oh, you've got to get this done. I set reminders on my phone. So when that reminder comes up, I'm like, oh, well, I need to get started, but I'm doing this other thing. And so you kind of have to weigh it out. But it gives you that push to get started. Okay, so I don't know if y'all can read all of these. It's kind of small, but I found this like infographic about working under pressure. So there are some ways that it might be working well for you and other ways that it's not actually working. So some things you tell yourself like, oh, I'll work better under pressure, but it's kind of a test to like, do you work better under pressure? So read them on, can y'all all see these? Some of you can. I don't think you can zoom in, but for the ones of you that can read them, or can't read them, the top left it says for flourishes. So if you believe that you have the skills and the resources, if you are in control of the situation, if you feel supported, channel your nerves in a helpful way, it reminds yourself of positive previous experiences, you believe that you'll achieve your goals. So those are some of the reasons that working under pressure can be beneficial for you. So do any of you think that it does work well for you? Working under pressure? Yeah? You think it does? How does it like benefited you?
It just pushed me to limits that I never thought I could push myself before.
Yeah.
I went through like a lot of things from the school, like for joint organizations and stuff like that. So I kind of learned how to adjust and adapt under pressure, and I use a lot of those to remind me, like,
Okay.
okay, you've been here before, you know it's a big, you know this, like, you need to take a rest, take a break, you can.
Okay.
You know how to deal with it. So.
Okay, so you feel like you're more motivated when you wait till the last minute. There's more on the line, 'cause at that point you kind of have to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Like,
Okay.
when you can't afford to waste time, like you know that assignment's due at 11:59 and it's 6, you gotta get you don't have time
Right.
for the YouTube videos. 3 minutes is precious minutes.
Yeah.
And when you've done it a lot, you kind of get the hang of it. You're like, okay, we're back at this again.
Right.
Let's do this.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that you kind of know that, okay, I wasted all this time. I had a few days to do it, but there was too much time at that point. You didn't plan ahead. And so now it's crunch time and you got to do it right then.
And it's like, for example, for me, what happens a lot is I was in the fantasy football and stuff. So like, it's like I already looked at that, so I should just study. So like, I just think of it like that. So okay, you already had a lot of time to look at it.
Right.
So you just
Right. Right. So you kind of go back and forth with yourself. You like wait. So like, okay, I already did this, so I'm not going to check it again. I do that a lot. I'll pull out my phone and I've already checked all my social media apps. There are no notifications. My phone didn't light up, but I just want to check it again. It's not a good idea. So for wilting under pressure, these are some of the negative effects for doing it last minute. So the situation demands too much from them. So maybe the assignment, you don't have enough time to finish it in the 2 hours before your assignment's due. You're not in control of the situation. You feel isolated. Maybe you have questions, but you don't have anybody to ask because you're due in a couple hours. What do you stand to lose? These things might start going through your head. You start getting yourself down. You get overwhelmed by your nerves. Like a lot of people that have anxiety, when they wait till the last minute, it makes it worse. So all they can think about is all of the negatives and all of the things they should have done or they didn't do, which takes away from what they're supposed to be doing right then. Dwelling on the uncertainty of what might happen. So you think about the what ifs. So you start catastrophizing. You're like, oh, if I fail this exam, I'm going to fail the class and I'm going to have to retake it over and redo my schedule. And it can kind of snowball like that. Thinking that you won't achieve your goals. So you might start getting like a lot of negative thoughts. And disengaging, withdraw, and making confused decisions. So you might turn in like a half-assed assignment because you had to turn it in, but you know that that's not your best work. So you kind of get yourself down. Camilla? Okay, how do you convince yourself that procrastinating is beneficial, other than I work well under pressure? What are some other things you tell yourself?
there are things that are more important to do right now.
Okay, there are other things that have to get done, and this can wait. Very good. Anybody else? Think about it. When you're sitting on the couch or you're sitting at your computer, like what are ways you convince yourself that you don't need to do your homework right now?
Feel like you need some relaxation time.
Right. Yeah. I need to relax first. I've had a long day. Like I need to watch TV. Yeah.
This might not be procrastinating, but let's say you have multiple classes and you have something else to do.
Right.
So you make that a priority, what you're supposed to focus on.
Right.
And later on down the road, and by the time you get done with it, I need a break, and then you forget that you have something else.
Yeah. That's a good point because we all have multiple classes. So you have stuff due probably every week for each of those classes. And if you get so caught up in doing so well in one, you might forget about the one that's really easy, but you still have assignments to do. So that is a very good point.
So like you said, time management within all of your classes, but then saying, okay, I'm going to take a 10-minute break, and that turns into like a 15-minute nap,
Yep.
and that turns into an hour.
Yeah, exactly. That alarm goes off and you're like, oh no, like I just need 10 more minutes. And then that 10 more minutes turns into 2 more hours and there's most of your afternoon. Yep. Does someone have their hand up in the back? Okay, you can go to the next one. Okay, it's for my wellness. So I'm a counseling master's program, and they like preach like wellness to us a lot. So I use that as my excuse a lot. I need some time to myself. Like I need to relax. Like you said, I need to, have some downtime before I do my work. I work hard. I deserve a break. So if you've been doing schoolwork all day, or you've been at actual work or class all day, you've had a busy schedule, you come home, like you just want to sit down. You don't want to do more schoolwork. You just want some time to relax, watch TV, talk on the phone, watch videos. The work is easy, it can wait. So that's like you mentioned with the classes. A lot of times you have a balance. Now some people have all hard classes or all easy, but a lot of the time it's a mix. So you might have one class where like SLS is a perfect example because it's an easy class, but there are a lot of assignments. So you might think, oh, that's okay, I'll do that tomorrow. But then you get off work tomorrow and a friend calls. They're like, oh, do you want to go out for a drink or do you want to get some coffee? And you're like, yeah, I'll do that. Then you get home at 11 o'clock and realize that you have an assignment due in 30 minutes and you put it off. It's too hard to concentrate right now. So this can happen a lot if you are trying to study in an environment where it's loud, or maybe you live at home or live with friends and there's a lot of stuff going on and you really can't concentrate right now. So even though you might know you need to study, you might not be able to.
I know some of my biggest time wasters is when I came to campus in like midterms, finals, and I go to like all-night studying and it's packed there.
Yep.
So I leave, I go to like business admin, it's packed there. Go to student union, it's packed there. So I'm literally running around in a circle trying to find a place to study.
That's a good point, especially during, like you said, during finals week or like the week right before. It's like everyone floods to campus. They realize that they haven't done a lot of studying all semester in the other few weeks, so they're cramming for their finals. So what are some things you could do to combat that?
Just find a place that you know no one's going to go.
Right, or find a place off campus. So it doesn't have to be like the library on campus. There is a Orlando library. Probably not many people there. You could go to a coffee shop. You could go to, like if you have an apartment, like just the desk in your room. If you live on campus, common rooms. So you got to find a place ahead of time. So instead of if you know that finals week, like campus is packed, so maybe like try to look a place beforehand that you could study that wouldn't be as busy. Okay, so when I was making this workshop, I found so many memes on procrastination, and that took a large part of my time. And I really could have done the whole workshop in memes. So I really liked this one. It said, I'm not a procrastinator, I just prefer doing all my work in a deadline-induced panic. So like y'all mentioned before, when you do it, the day of, you know that you have to do it right then because it has to be done. So it's it raises your anxiety. The other one, procrastination, is like a credit card. It's a lot of fun until you get the bill. So you get your test back and you're like, oh man, like I really wanted to do well and I got a C-, and then you start justifying. You're like, well, I guess that's okay. Like it could have been worse. I could have failed the exam, but it also could have been better. So you kind of weigh yourself back and forth. What could I have done differently? Okay, so barriers are going to happen. Even if you have like a perfect plan and it's been working for you, like stuff happens. So what is stuff that gets in the way of your productivity?
Oftentimes, like, since I don't have to go on campus anymore, after I get go to class, I usually have to get something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
But then the shuttle buses take a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and so I end up losing a lot of time just traveling
Mm-hmm.
to places to study and everything.
Yeah, so traveling in between, that's a good point. Getting from one place to another, a lot of people live off campus, kind of like far from campus. So they have to drive like an hour here and back, and that's 2 hours of their day that's gone. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, so you're in the groove, you're finally studying, trying to be productive, and their computer shuts off. So that is a perfect example. Like you don't expect that, and it just happens. Sometimes your stuff gets saved, and sometimes it doesn't. So then all your work is for nothing. So what are some ways that you could be prepared for that? Start earlier. Yes, saving your stuff. Also, if you have like a flash drive, like saving it to a flash drive instead of just your computer in case the computer like shuts down for good. That can be helpful. I think you had your hand up, somebody in the middle. Productivity. What stuff gets in your way? Work. Yeah. Someone calls, say, hey, can you come in and pick up a shift? You need the money, but you know you have to study, so you gotta weigh the pros and cons.
Going out with friends.
Yep, going out with friends. That is a big one because you want to socialize, like you want to have fun and you want to talk to your friends, but you know you have stuff to do as well, so you got to find that balance.
Extracurricular activities,
Uh-huh.
especially.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm in a fraternity.
Mhm.
Every time that I try to sit down and study something like that, we always have something going. Like, we
Right.
have an event plan, and we have somewhere
Mhm.
we have to be, so it takes time away from studying. So
Yeah.
that's when you gotta really crank it.
Exactly. Right, or have like a set schedule. Because I was in a sorority. I know like stuff happen. You have like social events and recruitment events, and there's always like, but you've got to figure out what are the mandatory events and what are the things you just like want to go to or should go to. So we'll talk about that when we get to time management.
Your whole gym schedule, like saying
Mhm.
you can go gym 5 days a week and then you have to study for this exam,
Mhm.
and let's do that for that class,
Mhm.
that's too. And you just end up doing all of your classwork and everything.
Right.
Your whole schedule gets screwed.
Yeah, that is a big thing. We'll talk about that in time management, but a lot of people have like a set gym schedule. Like they'll go to this gym at the same time every day, but they don't have a set study schedule. They're just like, oh, I'll just study whenever. So it goes back to like prioritizing. You got to find a balance. What or who are your distractions?
My case is sports.
Yeah, sports, watching games all weekend long. Yeah, so I don't have time to do schoolwork. Like I've got to watch all these football games.
I'll just write a paper while I'm watching a sport. It'll just take forever.
Right. Write a couple sentences every commercial break.
Probably my roommates. 'Cause I
Yeah.
will be studying.
Mhm.
My friend will like get in a conversation with me, and I'll turn it into like a 30-minute discussion.
Yeah, it's really distracting. Like you want to talk to them or want to hear what they have to say, or maybe you just ask them a question and then they answer, but then just keep on, right? So you got to set those boundaries. In the back?
And if you have pets, so you have
Yes.
a lot of attention.
Yes, I have a cat and he requires a lot of attention, so I totally get that, especially the pets that are able to like jump on top of your laptop or get in front of you when you're reading. That is a definite distraction. Yeah.
Reading and then getting sucked in.
Okay. Yeah. So you like to read for pleasure. Yeah. So that can be, I think you're just going to read for a few minutes to take a break and you're so interested you can't put the book down. Okay.
Watching the first episode of the TV show.
Oh, yes. Netflix is a definite, procrastination. Like, it's easy to procrastinate while watching TV. Even if it's not the first episode. You watch an episode and something happens at the end and you really want to know what happens next. One thing that I used to do, I don't really do this anymore, but I would watch an episode and then, say, I had to read, 10 pages of my schoolwork, and then I could watch another episode. So I would use TV as, a reward. So you got to find a balance, but you have to have self-control to do that because it's very easy to just sit there and start the next episode.
Sometimes on some days I have this idea where I should do homework, but then I convince myself that I should either go jogging or clean the house instead.
Yes, It's funny, I have a slide on here. It talks about cleaning. Like, my favorite time to clean is when I have all this other schoolwork to do. I really liked this one. What?
You do get a clean house. Though.
Yes, right. So you get something out of it. You're still productive, but then you still have all these other assignments that have deadlines. I really liked this one because it divides up different things that distract you. So surfing the internet, like y'all mentioned, like YouTube videos, scrolling through social media, that can be really easy. Snacking. So some people, especially if you're studying like at the kitchen table or something, like the refrigerator's right there or the pantry's right there. And if you're hungry especially, you can't focus on what you're doing because all you want to do is eat. Taking a nap. We've all been there, like I'm gonna take a nap for an hour and then you're napping for 3 hours and there went your study time. Doodling, it's really easy to start daydreaming if you're reading a textbook and first of all you don't understand what it's saying or you're not interested in what it's saying, especially a lot of like gen ed classes. You just start daydreaming or you start doodling and next thing you know you have no idea what you just read. Playing video games, whether it's computer games, Xbox, whatever. And then you make a lot of excuses. So like we've talked about several, like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Like, oh, I'll do it next week. I have time. Next. Okay, so barriers are going to happen, but what matters is how you deal with the barriers. So beginning, they kind of start out, they have a plan for the day, but then something comes up. So people, like A students, would recover with a minimal delay. It talks about the B students, like they'll organize their life and work so it won't happen again, or it doesn't seem like it'll be a big factor. They just keep going. And then C students are below, like they get derailed. So something happens unexpected, their whole plan for the day, they just throw it out. So you have to figure out a way to kind of get back on track and kind of deal with those barriers because stuff's going to happen. Maybe you get in the car to go study, go to campus, and your car won't start. So you've got to fix your battery, or maybe you got to campus, you're almost ready, and you spill your coffee like all over yourself. So like stuff is going to happen. You just got to have a plan B and a plan C to kind of deal with that. Okay, reasons for procrastination. So a lot of times, especially if you look at web courses and you realize you have so many things due tomorrow, then that just makes you want to shut the computer and not do any of it. You're just like, oh wow, like I don't even know where to start. So you just don't start. Does that ever happen? Yeah?
I know one time I was working with this girl, and we both had the same amount of work to do, and she just like breaks down and starts crying. I'm just looking at her like, well, you're wasting your time crying. You should be doing work right now.
Yeah, sometimes you can feel so overwhelmed with emotion because then you also realize it's your fault. Like you waited till the last minute, you let it pile up. But yeah, sometimes it can be really overwhelming. You don't know where to start, so you just don't. Lack of motivation. Why am I doing this, or why is this important? So how many of you ask yourself that when you're looking at assignments? Yeah? Especially if it's a gen ed course or if you don't have a major. If you haven't decided what you want to do yet, it can be really easy to kind of go back and forth with, well, why do I have to do this assignment? Why am I even in school? Even some people, they don't even want to be in college. Their parents are forcing them to go to college. So they're less motivated to do the work because they don't have a purpose. They don't have a reason for doing it. So we'll talk about motivation at the end as well. Disorganization. So maybe you sat down, you're ready to study, and you can't find your notebook where you took your notes from class. Or maybe you can't find your favorite pen that you have to use when you study. It can be really frustrating. Maybe you're logging onto web courses and you can't remember your password. So it can be really frustrating when you're trying to do well and you're trying to prepare ahead of time, but this organization gets in your way. You have to shuffle through everything on your desk. You can't find your textbook. You don't remember what chapter you're supposed to read, so you have to find your syllabus. A lot of different factors can get in the way there. Another one is perfectionism. So some people get really discouraged if they know the work's not going to be perfect, especially if they've waited to the last minute. There's oh, there's not time to make this assignment perfect, so I'm just not going to do it. Or I'm not going to get an A on this, so I'll just turn in what I have, and I was going to fail the assignment anyway. So they kind of go from one extreme to the other.
Alright,
Mhm.
and but you don't understand it, but you still
Yeah.
read 15 minutes a day. But the night before the test, you stay up all night until you retain that information. Is that procrastination or?
Yes. Yeah. Because, okay, so you said you're reading 15 minutes ahead, but you're not even understanding what you're reading. So what are you doing to understand the material?
And you ask your professor, and you ask questions, but you know how professors are. You try to read up on it and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And you still don't get it. And the night before, you just like, you know what, I'm going to stay up all night and do whatever it takes me to
Right.
retain this.
Yeah, it is procrastination because you could have been focusing all that time that you spent the last day, days in advance. So instead of 15 minutes a day, maybe it takes you an hour a day for that class. So maybe you realize that 15 minutes isn't enough to understand what you're going over. There's a handout on our website. I don't think it's in this PowerPoint. It's called like the 5 types of studying. And there's one, the first type is you're just studying to gather information. So when you're reading your textbook or you are in class taking notes, you're just gathering new information. You're not actually learning anything. And then the second one, I think, is studying to learn the material. So then after class, it can be really beneficial to read over your notes from class or like review your textbook notes if you take textbook notes, which you should, to kind of combine the two. So then you're actually like learning. So that's the part that it sounds like you're missing. You're getting the information, you just don't understand what you're reading. And then the next one's it's like recite the information. So you review, after you understand it, then you can review the information over and over. And I don't remember the fourth one, but the last one is like self-testing. So after you get your exams back, if you review like the ones you missed, then you'll better know like what to prepare for the next time. So maybe you spent a lot of time on definitions, but the professor only asked like 3 or 4 questions on definitions. It was a lot more over this other chart or something that you didn't even really look at. So that can kind of help you to figure out what you're missing in your studying. Okay, if not now, when? So you put it off till tomorrow. So I really liked the first one. So it says, a mystical land where 99% of all human productivity, motivation, and achievement is stored. But the problem is when tomorrow comes, then it's today. Then you put it off till tomorrow again and tomorrow again. So there it is. And so tomorrow's the best time to do everything you had planned for today. Okay, so like I said earlier, the best time to clean is when you have a whole list of assignments you need to do. So a lot of these are like different steps of procrastination. So a false sense of security. So it's not really due for a long time, so I'll just take a nap now, like I'll do it later. Getting lazy, so you think like, oh, I could get a head start. Like I, have some free time and I could get started. And then you're like, nah, I don't really want to. Excuses, so like you mentioned your pets. So it's like, oh, my cat needs my love right now. Like it needs my attention. I can't do the work. Denial. So if you're not like focusing on your wellness, so the night before, like I don't need to sleep. I'll just drink more coffee. I'll just stay up all night. Like it'll be fine. I can sleep tomorrow after my exam. And then you go into like a crisis. Oh my gosh, I'm not prepared. I'm going to fail. The world's going to end. And then it kind of repeats. Goes in a circle. Okay, so combating procrastination. Who has some ideas of how to fix it?
Baby steps.
Baby steps? Yeah. Like I said, it's not going to happen overnight. There's not like a one quick fix for procrastination. It's a lot of different factors.
I just use incentives.
Incentives? Okay, so you kind of reward yourself?
Yeah, so like I'll do homework still a couple days before. Because I like to binge watch.
Okay, yeah.
Like I set apart a day of the week
Mhm.
just completely binge watch, so I don't have anything.
Okay, yeah, so you realize like, okay, if I get all of my assignments done, then I get to watch all of this TV. Okay.
Set a goal.
Okay, set a goal. Yeah, that can be really helpful if you're working towards something. 'Cause if you don't know why you're doing it, then you get less motivated.
You can keep a planner and then write the days before they're due instead of following.
Yes, very good. Y'all are going over a lot of good points.
Strategizing is basically coming up with ways in which you can break it down like step by step. Like
Yeah.
baby steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that'll knock it down.
Right, you got to make a schedule.
Take all those steps, but like if you do end up procrastinating, you just have to suck it up. Like you dug yourself in that hole. You
Right.
gotta jump out.
You have to accept it. Like, okay, I did this to myself, and now I have to deal with it.
You can't just like give up because then instead of getting a 50, you get a 0.
Right. That's a good point. So once you've already like skipped all those steps and you already got to the point where you're procrastinating, you just have to own it and you've got to make the best of it. Okay.
But on Google Chrome, they let you download like the add-on.
Yes.
I have this add-on where it limits the time that I can spend on the site.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
so I don't spend too much time on one site.
Yes. I have heard of that before, and is it the same one where you can like lock the apps or like lock the websites?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a Google add-on where you can lock YouTube or Facebook or whatever app or whatever website that you find yourself getting lost on for hours at a time. You can lock it for like a certain amount of time. So say you won't be able to log into that website again for like 2 more hours. So that whole time you're less likely to do other things if you know that's your go-to. Yeah.
Like on web courses, I linked my whole calendar
Mhm.
to my phone, so then I can see like everything like that's through that.
Mhm.
And so pretty much set up your own personal
Mhm.
planner, but instead of like getting a book and writing it all down,
Mhm.
everything's right there. And then
Yes.
pocket points.
Yes, I've heard of that as well. Pocket points is because you get like points for not using your phone for long periods of time. Yeah. So that's really good idea. I like what you said about putting it on your phone, because if you know that, we'll go over like planners and stuff, but if you know that you are not going to look at a paper planner, it's probably not a great idea to write all your assignments there if you know you're not going to look at it. If you know your phone is always in your pocket and most of the time in your hand, then it's probably a better idea to put your assignments and your reminders in your phone.
Find intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to find your reasons for within, because there are a lot of, there's actually a slide on the 2 of those. So there are a lot of like external factors that can motivate you, but you'll get more done if you find a reason within yourself. Because if someone tells you like, you have to do this, you don't want to do it. So you've got to figure out why. You can do all of those. So I think there's 4. Okay. So a lot of y'all had really great ways to combat procrastination, and they're kind of like summarized in these little subjects. So motivation, you got to figure out why you're doing what you're doing and what your goals are. Time management, you've got to set a schedule, and the thing is you have to like try to stick to it. Like it's one thing you can make this great schedule, but if you're not sticking to it or you don't ever look at it, it's not doing you any good. For goal setting, again, like motivation, you've got to have something to work towards. And then self-discipline. So that's the hardest part, but it's also the most important, because all of these things that we're going to go over, they require self-discipline. You have to remember that you're in control. You're the only one that's responsible. You can't blame your friends. You can't blame your parents. You can't blame your professors. You have to figure out a way to get around it and deal with like the barriers that come up. Motivation. So the best way to get something done is to just start. That's always the hardest part for me, especially in writing papers. I like put it off, but it's not hard. Once I get started, I don't mind doing it. It's just getting started. That's the hardest part. Okay, so questions to provoke motivation. So if you don't know what your motivations are, or you don't know how to figure out like what your goals are, think about some of these. So what made you decide to attend college? Anybody? What made you decide?
I wanted to make a living. I wanted to enjoy what I'm doing in life.
Right.
And not be financially struggling.
Yeah, you don't want to struggle to pay your bills and live paycheck to paycheck, and you want to do something you enjoy. Yeah?
His reasons also, my mom's a teacher, so
Mhm.
I just like learning.
Yeah. Yeah, so you like learning. You wanted to go to college to learn more and to like broaden your horizons. Okay, what is your dream job? Anybody? What's your goal? Like what is like ideal, like that's what I would love to do for the rest of my life? Game designer?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what the steps are required to become a game designer? Yeah, okay. Uh-huh, okay.
CEO.
Okay, a CEO of a company. Do you know like what kind of requirements you need to have in order to get a position of a CEO?
I know like a couple positions and like roughly how much time you spend in each position.
Right, so you know you have to kind of like work your way up, okay? A lot of times people have a goal of like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a nurse, I'm going to be a lawyer. that they may be like freshmen or sophomores and they haven't looked up like what's required to achieve it. So a lot of times people think that their gen ed classes, oh, these don't matter, this has nothing to do with my major, but they forget that those impact your GPA, which is going to impact your competitiveness to get into an internship, to get a job. So you have to kind of look at the bigger picture. So figure out like, what do I need to do to work towards my goals? Also figuring out what areas could you improve in. Like, are you being honest and realistic with yourself about what your strengths are and what areas you need to work on? Do you know what's holding you back? So that's not always an academic issue. In this STARK office, the ACE coaching program, it deals with a lot of freshman students who are on academic probation, and I oversee that program, and it's a lot of the times it's not academics, that's not their issue. It's a lot because family stuff could be going on. Maybe they had like a long-term relationship and their significant other just broke up with them and they're devastated. Maybe someone in their family just died. Maybe they're dealing with like anxiety and they don't know how to focus on school when they have all these other things going on. So you've got to figure out what is it that's holding you back and then find the resources to help you. How do you convince yourself to get out of bed or put your phone down? So if you're not sure like what your motivations are or how to stop procrastinating, just figure it out. Like, okay, what makes me put my phone down? Like, what makes me shut my laptop and like get out my textbook? Self-defeating behaviors in college. So I passed these out in the beginning, so most of you should have them. There might be a couple left over here on the table. If you don't, could you pass those up to me? There's some more over there. Just pass them back. So there's a whole list of things on here about self-defeating behaviors in college. So read through the list and just shout out, you don't have to raise your hand, just shout out a couple that apply to you, that you know that you do. Don't always read the textbook. Yeah, that's one that I don't always do. Procrastinating, yes, the whole point of all this. Procrastinate on assignments. Yeah, not having a set schedule, so that can be a big thing. You're just like, oh, I'll study whenever I have free time, but what happens when you don't? Yeah, both of you. Yeah, so it's 7:30 in the morning, no one's motivated to talk to anybody, like all you can think about is, I want to go back to bed. No. Yep, you're saying, I don't need the textbook, like it says it's required, but I can get by without it. Exactly. So you're like, I don't even like reading, and so I don't have to read. Like I can learn it without it. So all of those, it makes you your own worst enemy. So all of these things are things that you do that make it harder on yourself to be successful. So you've got to kind of realize that I'm the one that's doing this to myself. You can go ahead and click the next one. Yeah. We're running out of time. We still have some time, but I put a lot of stuff in here. So attitudes affect grades. So if you're like really negative or you get really like down on yourself, it inhibits your ability to be successful. So if it makes you less motivated, it makes you not want to learn, if you have a lot of like negative self-talk. So try to reframe that. So try to have a more positive outlook on studying. So that's really the first step. So instead of putting it off saying, I don't want to do this, I hate this, like I don't like this class, it doesn't apply to my major, figure out why you need to be successful in this class. Whether it's, I don't want it to tank my GPA, or it's a prereq for another class, so I need a good foundation. Figure out how you can kind of reframe your attitude towards what it is you're doing. Okay, have any of you ever heard of the stages of change? Nobody? Okay. So I know this is really small, but if you Google like stages of change, like you will see several things like this. But what it is there are different levels of your ability to change. So a lot of people like want you to be in the action stage or assume everyone else is in the action stage, but that's not true. It starts in pre-contemplation. So this actually, I'll tell you like the background. It's actually founded in like working with people with addictions, but it applies. So if you pull it up and that's what you see, that's why it started. But it applies to any type of category. So Pre-contemplation is you have no intention of changing. Like, you don't think you have a problem. You don't realize that you're doing anything wrong. So a lot of people are in that stage. They're like, no, I'm doing fine. Like, I still get my assignments done. It doesn't matter that I do it at the last minute. I still get an A. I did it the night before and I still got an A. So it kind of reinforces that I don't need to change. Contemplation means that you realize that there is a problem, but that you are not ready to change, or you don't want to. You're like, yeah, this is probably not a good idea, but I'm still going to do it anyway. So a lot of people fall in contemplation. Preparation is you are preparing to change. You're kind of like, well, what would that look like? What steps would I need to take? You're like making a plan. And then action, so actually making the change. You're implementing a new schedule. You're trying some new study strategies. You just started. But then there's the maintenance. So just because you started doing something doesn't mean you're going to keep doing it. So the maintenance is you have to keep reminding yourself. You have to hold yourself accountable and keep doing that new study schedule or keep trying that new strategy. And then there is relapse. So of course we're all going to fall back into like old behaviors, but it doesn't mean that you have to start back at the beginning. So you can learn from each time you kind of lapse. And you can, so the next time you might, go back to preparation. You might not start at the beginning. You're like, okay, that plan didn't work. I need a new plan. So then it kind of goes in a circle. So this is just a model for change. I'm not going to read through these, but just a way that you can like identify like what negative statements that you are holding you back. Figuring out people that you believe have positive attitudes or that you want to be more like. Maybe people in your classes that are really successful or your friends. Different situations and different people you can talk about. So if you tell people you want to make a change, they're more likely to hold you accountable. Like you'll see people post on Facebook like, oh, I'm going to start going to the gym every day and I'm going to post about it. So like if you don't see me post, then call me out. So that's like having other people hold you accountable. Yeah.
Have your best friend do it, because then he or she will really get on you.
Yeah, they will.
Like,
Yeah.
They won't encourage you. They'll just like crap on you.
Yeah, make you feel guilty for not doing it. Yeah. So sometimes life can be really overwhelming, like with class and school, work, family, homework, extracurriculars, eating. So the middle says attempt to do everything until stress takes over. Things start slipping, you cry in your bed and do none of it and just watch TV. So it's how it kind of spirals. So that is, it happens. It's not unusual. But there is time. So I like this breakdown. My supervisor actually came up with this to break down how many hours are in a week. So you start by like taking things that like your classes and sleeping and eating. So the sleeping and eating I know are generous because I know most of you probably do not sleep for 8 hours a night and you do not spend 3 hours a day eating. So you have even more there. But if you subtract all that, you still have 79 hours left. So if you're working 20 hours a week and then socializing for 25 or just relaxing, that still leaves 34 hours a week for studying, which is a pretty crazy number. This was really surprising to me when I saw it. And obviously this is not everyone's schedule, like you can adapt it, but it's just kind of eye-opening to see like there is time. These are just some main like time management principles. So assess your current use of time. So what are you currently doing? How are you currently wasting time? Creating a routine or a schedule. That may change weekly. Maybe your job schedule changes every week. That's normal. That's okay. It just means that like every Saturday or every Sunday, you have to make a new schedule for the week for yourself. Tracking assignments and deadlines. Looking at web courses can be great, but what are you going to do before the day of? Like, yeah, it tells you when it is, but you've got to have some kind of method to let you know how far in advance you need to start studying or start preparing, some type of reminder. Breaking down the assignments in small tasks, so that can be really helpful. Like if you're a person that cannot sit there and read 30 pages at once, then don't try to do that. Like break them in smaller pieces. So maybe you'll read like 5 pages. Take a couple minutes, just kind of gather your thoughts, figure out what you read, read 5 more. So you've got to figure out what works for you. Planning ahead. Using reminders. So I really like the Reminders app on iPhones. I have several different tabs for different things, and it literally saves my life every day. And then reassess the use of your time monthly. So if you make a schedule and you realize, oh, this is not working for me, like I didn't stick to this at all, I need more time for this, then adjust. Define your priorities. So Time management starts with planning, but you have to think about the things that are definites first. So for most people, definites are work and class. So you know that you have to do those every week. But for other people, you have other things that are important to you. So it might be clubs, it might be sororities or fraternities, it might be sporting events, like whatever it is, whatever your priorities are, you need to put those in your schedule first and then make a study schedule around that. Because if you plan a study schedule and plan for a time and then you realize, oh, I have a weekly meeting that's every week at that time, that's not a great time for your study schedule because it's not going to happen. So you have to figure out what your definites are first and what's important to you. And then you can figure out what's your free time. Because a lot of the time that you think is free and you have all this time, there's actually other things you're supposed to be doing. You just aren't. So that's why I put free. You can go to the next one. Okay, so the full week scheduler that we're going to go over on the next page. On our website, like all of these handouts that I go over are on there. It's on SARC Online, and you can access them 24 hours a day. You can print them off. There's a lot of great stuff on there. But making a full week schedule is a great way to kind of map out your responsibilities. And you don't have to follow it verbatim. So people are like, oh, I can't follow this set schedule. Well, that's okay. It's like a guide. You use it to kind of see, is there time in the week and can I fit everything in? A lot of professors suggest that you study for 2 hours outside of class per credit hour, but that depends. Like, you know that some of your classes require a lot more attention than others. So you have to differ that per class. You're not going to use the same study strategies for every class. You have to figure out what is the best fit for you. Okay, yeah, these come in differently, so go one more. Okay, I think that's all of them. So this one is like a colorful example of how to create a schedule, and it looks really overwhelming at first. I see that, but if you break it down, so like the red is their class, so that's when they're in class. The gold is when they are at work, and then they added in like the times that they eat and the times that they like work out. Then you can add in your times to study. So whether some of these, like they're really specific, so studies chapter 12 for math test on Wednesday. That's what your study time should look like. When you write it down, be specific about what you're writing down, because if you're just putting review time homework and you sit down to review, like you don't know what you're supposed to be looking at, you might not even have your textbook with you, maybe it's at home, or maybe your notes are in your car, like you don't know what to do, so it's better if you're more specific about your study times. And then you have like extracurricular stuff too, and they had time to like watch TV and be on the computer. So it can be really beneficial to kind of map out what your week looks like. And spreading out your schedule can be important, so avoid taking on too much. So I know you have to work, like I work 2 jobs, like I get it, but you have to figure out like what am I able to do and still keep my grades up. So you have to learn to say no. Like if someone calls you like, hey, could you cover my shift, but you know you need to do these other assignments, just say no. Like you have to do what's best for you. Be cautious of your work hours. So if you go straight to work from class and you don't get off till 10, you know when you get home at 10:30, like the last thing that you want to do is read for your class tomorrow or do your assignment that's due in 2 hours. So plan ahead of time so you don't have to do that at the last minute. Also be realistic about the time you've allotted for school. So if you only allotted like 30 minutes to like read a whole chapter, that's not realistic. So be more realistic about how long it's going to take you to complete assignments. I'm going to speed through some of these because we've talked about a lot of them. So keeping track of your assignments and due dates. We all know you can use a planner. I think planners are great because you can see everything at one time, like it's everything like a calendar view, but that doesn't work for everyone. Your phone is probably the most realistic reminders to have. You can look at the calendar version, but also set like reminders for yourself. Web courses can be great. I like what you said about moving the calendar to your phone because it's still the information, but you have it somewhere where you're going to look at it more often. And then for those of you that don't use anything to track assignments or due dates, you've got to figure out why not and how that's affecting you and figure out what will work for you. You can go on to the next one. These are just like the pros of using a planner. You can physically mark stuff off. Quick reference guide. Next. Again, talks about the different electronic help. So there's like desktop post-its. It can be really helpful to remind you of things. The reminders app on your phone, and there's a variety of calendars for your phone or computer. I already mentioned this already, breaking down assignments. So instead of just writing study, be more specific about what you're going to study or what you're going to review. Okay, concentration. So this is what affects a lot of people when they're trying to study or like gets in the way of it. So you have to figure out, like you mentioned, like intrinsic reasons for setting goals. So this is more like what are your like intrinsic reasons for not concentrating. So maybe they're like physical distractions. Maybe you're really hungry. You haven't eaten lunch yet, so that's all you can think about is like going to get some food. Maybe you didn't get enough sleep last night, so you're like falling asleep. You're trying to study at 9 o'clock and like you keep falling asleep in front of your computer. Boredom, you're not interested in the material, so you're not motivated to do it. You get anxiety, so you're like really overwhelmed and you don't know like how to deal with that. Daydreaming is a big one that happens to me a lot, especially when you're reading. So you start reading and start thinking and then you don't even know what you're reading, so that's not helpful. Then the external causes, of course, we're all guilty of: TV, Facebook, YouTube, parents, friends. I thought comfy furniture was funny. You're like laying in your bed, you're like, oh, this is so comfy, like I don't want to get up, it's so warm and cozy in here. Noise, so maybe like the music with lyrics, you're trying to study with music on and then you start like singing the song or get really into it, so you can't focus on what you're reading. Go through. So all of these are distractions. You have to minimize distractions so you can study. So these are just like tips for concentration. So intend to study for a set amount of time. So if you know what time that you are done studying, you'll be more likely to like be more motivated. So like, okay, I only have to study for 1 hour. I can do 1 hour out of a whole day. Also have all of your materials ready, so your books and papers and notes. Studying in a quiet place, and if you can, try to study in the same place every time. It kind of gets your mind ready for studying. Vary the ways you study. So like I said, there's a lot of worksheets online, but don't do the same thing every time. You're less likely to be motivated to do that. Take breaks, and have a worry sheet. I really like this one. This has helped me a lot. If I'm reading and like my mind like goes really quickly, so I start thinking about things that I need to do or have to do the rest of the day. So if you take a piece of paper and just write down the things that like pop into your head as you're thinking of them, and you go back to reading, then they won't be on your mind anymore. So you're like, okay, I'm not going to forget that, I wrote it down, and then you can focus on reading. The back planning, so we talked about this a little while ago, kind of. So you've got to figure out what your long-term goals are for this one. You can go to the next one because it actually shows a picture of it. Click through. And then one more, I think. Okay. So you got to figure out what your long-term goals are. So maybe if it's to make like the president's or the dean's list, all right? So you've got to figure out what you have to do weekly to achieve those goals. So get an A on my bio exam. That's your first short-term goal, all right? How are you going to get an A on your bio exam? You got to figure out what you have to do like weekly or each daily. So if you take your long-term goals, maybe it's that dream job you talked about, okay? What are the weekly tasks I need to do? What are the daily tasks? Maybe you need to get an internship. Well, what do you need to do in an internship? You need to get your resume critiqued. You need to build up your resume or build up your GPA. So you've got to figure out how to break down those long-term goals into more manageable pieces. Successful time management, so it's kind of like an overview of things that we gone over. So know what your goals are, determine your priorities within those goals, anticipate future needs and changes, commit to punctuality and timeliness, so being on time, carry out the plan you make, and then remember that you are in control. You can go through all of those. So these are just, if you're struggling on campus, reach out to support services. Like there are people on campus to help you, to answer your questions. Whatever it is that you need, reach out to people. Like don't wait till the last minute, the week before finals, and then try to get some help. Be more productive, like do it now. Can you click on that? Yeah. If it won't pull up, that's okay. It's that's just the SARC Online website. If you just Google SARC Online, it should be one of the first ones that come up. Yeah. Okay, so scroll down to the learning skills resources. Yeah. Okay, so this is on our website, and all of these have like worksheets and handouts, and some of them even have videos on all these different topics. I think they're really helpful. So the ones we went over in here are on there, but then there's also a lot more. So if you know one of the areas that you struggle in, just click on it and see what it is. Like every worksheet on there is probably not going to be helpful for you, but I promise you there is something on there that could make a big difference in your current study habits or your current schedule. So definitely check this out. Anybody have any questions? Anything else? Okay. The last page, I know some of you probably have sheets that you want me to sign. If you can go ahead and put my name and email address on there if you need it, that'd be great, and then that way I can just have to sign it. I have some evals for you guys, so they're not very long. Just go through and fill these out, please, because that's how we prove that you were here. To give you one. Yeah. And thank you all for participating. Oh my God, that's so bright.
Turn this into my
Uh-huh.
one of my advisors. So can I just bring this home? Or do
Uh,
I fill out